Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Rowan Fendler. I'm a partner and head of the natural resource practice at Cripps Leadership Advisors. We're an executive search and industrials executive search firm headquartered out of London with offices in New York and Houston. I'm very honored to be here today. Today we're going to speak about leadership, and the mining industry is rapidly transforming, driven by geopolitical volatility, talent shortages, demand for transparency, and issues of trust and land access. These factors are reshaping stakeholder expectations and driving evolution in this age-old sector. Today's leaders must go beyond the traditional command and control approach. They need humility, curiosity, empathy, and courage to navigate the uncertainty and drive their companies forward. We're joined by 4 industry leaders who are going to share their perspectives on the leadership required for the energy transition. Joining me today is Marley Palin. Marley is the head of portfolio and performance for BHP Exploration. She brings extensive experience in strategy and innovation, and having held senior roles at Deloitte and Coca-Cola before joining BHP.
I'll take that.
Rob McEwen. Rob is the chairman and chief owner of McEwen Mining, with operations in Nevada, Ontario, and Argentina. He founded Goldcorp, growing its market cap from $50 million to over $9 billion. Rob is known for significant contributions to the gold industry and his generous donations of over $60 million to the healthcare and education. His accolades include Order of Canada and induction to the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Paul Fernyhough. Paul is the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at Eldorado Gold. He joined Eldorado in 2021 and has had several senior leadership roles, including Chief Strategy and Commercial Officer. And he's the integral member of the team that helped get the Skouries project funded. Before Eldorado, Paul spent nearly 2 decades with Repsol, leading their North American upstream and oil and gas division. Ross, I imagine everyone in this room knows Ross Beatty.
Probably not.
But just in case, Ross is a renowned Canadian geologist, mining entrepreneur, and environmentalist with over 45 years' experience. He founded Pan American Silver, one of the world's largest silver producers, has led numerous successful mining ventures, including his current role as executive chair of Equinox Gold. In addition to his industry achievements, Ross is a dedicated environmental advocate, founding the Sitka Foundation and supporting various renewable energy projects. His contributions have earned him inductions to the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, Order of Canada, and yesterday he had a new trophy, the Northern Miners Lifetime Achievement Award. From all of us, say congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll dive right into the questions, and we'll start with Ross. Given your extensive experience in the mining sector, how do you see the role of leadership evolving to meet the demands of the energy transition, and what specific skills do you believe are the most critical for the future leaders?
Well, you have to separate kind of senior management from, the workforce, and I think really in the whole span of human resources and companies today, it requires different thinking. But that's okay, because evolution of education, evolution of time brings new skills into the workforce. For example, today, AI is a very important part of business, actually, and computer skills are very important. In every aspect of mining, exploration, development, the whole ecosystem. And whereas I don't have a clue about AI, I don't have a clue about the more high-tech aspects of business and of operation of mines, a lot of young people coming into the space today are extremely fluent in this. And so this is sort of this evolution. I'm not at all worried about human resources particularly, because we have good education systems all over the world now, all over Latin America where our mines are, certainly in Canada and the United States. The feeder educational systems for human resource needs in mining are there. And so we are finding good people to fit these new needs as the industry evolves.
Thank you. And just to build on that, I think it's quite interesting. We have 2 individuals on this panel who come from outside the mining sector. So Paul, Marley, and starting with Paul, given your extensive background in the oil and gas and manufacturing consulting background, what potential do you see for bringing talent from outside the mining sector into the mining sector, and what skills gap and innovation can they add to the sector?
Well, Rowan, conscious of the audience here, I'm not going to suggest that oil and gas has a particular advantage, although, I've been very pleased to be reinventing myself as a gold miner over the last 4 years. But what the sector does represent is a very large human capital resource that's now available to the mining sector, where people are often wanting to leave that industry and take their skills elsewhere. And these are people that understand what it takes to work in a commodity industry, understand the business risks, the economic risks that it is to bring a resource from under the ground up and into a format that we can use it as society. I think the one specific thing that oil and gas experienced professionals are able to bring is from an industry that's had to respond to the challenges of environment and sustainability far more effectively and for longer over the last 2 to 3 decades. This is an industry that has been persecuted and chased, in particular around greenhouse gas emissions. And for the people that have worked within it, and those companies that have actively taken on that challenge of responding to it, demonstrating that these critical resources are still required for a planet that's going to continue to evolve, they bring the experience of how, in the face of criticism, you're able to evolve your business and address those concerns that have been put on you. And I think that's something that we can definitely bring into the mining space.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think at its heart, people crossing from different industries brings diversity of perspective, right? And one of my favorite stats is from a McKinsey report, and I think it's like diverse teams make higher quality decisions 87% of the time. And I work in exploration. Making high quality decisions quickly with very little information is what we have to do every single day. And so I think bringing different perspectives from different industries, it gives a completely fresh way of looking at the world. They come without bias. They look at the way we do things and ask why. They come with a point of curiosity. They have to get to the root cause of things to understand why we do them in that way. And I think that innate curiosity brings problem solving. I really do believe from an innovation perspective that some of the biggest unlockers in this industry are taking common problems from other industries and replicating them. So there are so many brilliant solutions that we have out there already that are really good matches to the problems that we have. But we're only going to get that when we cross-pollinate and stop doing things the way we've always done them.
Thank you. Interesting. Rob, you've successfully transformed companies, led them to great heights, from Goldcorp to McEwen now. What key leadership principles have guided you throughout your careers?
I think coming from another industry helped. I grew up in the investment industry and then moved into the mining industry, and it was like stepping into a vat of quick-drying cement. You just couldn't move your feet. I mean, in the financial industry, if you have an investment you don't like or hasn't performed, you just sell it and you move on. But in mining, there are problems that stick around for a long time. And so you just have to spend more time there. I found we were a small company in Goldcorp initially, and everybody said, well, we're going to be a big company one day. We want to go to that point on the horizon. And I said, well, how are we going to get there? And they said, well, we'll just do what everybody else has done. And I really don't like eating the dust of following someone. So we differentiated ourselves and stepped out of line and said, let's set, rather than following the standards of the big companies, let's set standards the big companies have to follow. And so it's that differentiation. And I think you have to, just thinking of the question you asked earlier, I think it's the power of persuasion that's needed in the executive suite, because you have to, one, convince the people, the aging workforce, that they have to adopt a different habit when looking at the environment. And then you need to persuade the people who are opposed to mining and the youth that, one, this is an industry that's progressed substantially and is a much better environmental steward today, and show good examples of reclamation. And I think that's critically important. We have to make mining look sexy to the youth and attract talent, and we have to move forward, because we use a lot of science, but it's invisible to most people. There's a historic legacy perception of what mining is about, and it's a significantly different industry today.
You're spot on. I think that the perception of the mining industry, we are our own worst enemies and speak very poorly about what we do and the benefits of what we do. So it's I think Rose touched on this multiple times over the years. We need to be better at educating everyone about what we do and how we do it and the benefits that we reap from it. But I think it's also what companies can do to attract those individuals from outside of the industry or industry. And I think you and I, Rob, had a really good conversation the other day about what Los Angeles, sorry, I butchered that, but are doing to really transform the site down there. Maybe if you could just touch on what you guys are doing down there and how it's going to be able to attract people to it and be interested in mining.
Certainly. Los Azules is a copper project we have in Argentina. It's in the Andes Mountains, tight to the border with Chile. It's a very, has stark beauty, and you go up there and you say, well, how do you preserve it? And a couple of years ago, I asked an architect who's considered the Steve Jobs of the green living building space to sit down with our engineers and our consultants and management team and say, we have to redefine and transform the impression of mining. So this fellow has done a lot of work in the sustainable building spot. And we've just gone and created, which I think will be a very beautiful facility. And it might be hard to imagine a mine being described as beautiful. But it's looking at, first of all of the power we're going to have will be renewable source electricity, wind hydro power from YPF Power in Argentina. Rather than a conventional copper mine that produces a concentrate, we'll be producing a cathode that would be considered green. It'll be produced on site rather than having to go to a smelter to be refined. Our carbon signature will be 1/10 to start with, and by 2038 we plan to be carbon neutral. Water usage will be 1/4 of a conventional copper mine. We won't have a tailings dam that threatens downstream communities or has that risk of doing it. We're in a seismically active area, and when we looked at a conventional copper mine plan, a tailings dam of 300 meters high, we just went, this is a non-starter. I mean, that could collapse at some point. And the accommodation, it was mentioned earlier on, Rowan, that the mining industry is suffering from a shortage of talent, and it's becoming more acute because of the negative perception. No one's going through the schools of geology and mine engineering. And we're at a time when we need more minerals if we want to combat climate change and that. And we need more mines because there's not enough product being produced annually, and there's not enough material on surface to be recycled. So you're into mines, so how do you make that mine acceptable and attractive to the people who are going to work there? So if you can imagine, the Incas terraced the mountains there and it grew gardens. So we're looking at the accommodation. It's terraced, it's enclosed in a translucent structure that's about 1 kilometer long. It has hanging gardens, it processes its own water, grows its own produce. It's really quite revolutionary, and I think I have a video when I present at 11 o'clock that if you wanted to see that. I think it's just a fabulous design, and I think it could be one of the models for mines going ahead in the future.
Sure. Thank you. And touching on being able to attract new leaders into the industry and kind of foster the leadership within right now, Marley, advancement of technology in mining industry is rife at the moment, particularly in driving the energy transition. What leadership qualities have become more important, and how have these changes influenced the way leaders at BHP approach their roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, I think we've spoken on, obviously, we're seeing a wave of technology transformation at the moment. And I think we are seeing the next generation come up with those, fundamental technical skills that we need to address some of the technology challenges. I think the piece on leadership really comes back to less about the technical understanding of the technology and more about how are we thinking. I'm a big fan of hard, soft skills. And when I say hard, soft skills, I mean, how are our leaders equipped to do structured problem solving? Can they take a problem, break it down, logically work it through? Do they have systems thinking? Can they identify different data points, draw connections between them, notice patterns, systems? What's their learning agility? How quickly do they pick up things? Do they make data-driven decisions and understand why they're making decisions? One of my favorite anecdotes for when I joined the exploration team was looking at how we were prioritizing our portfolio. And one of the measures, you went through and prioritized the portfolio, and then there was this gut check column that sort of overrid our prioritization. And one of the first things I did was scrap it. And not for the reasons that you think, but because I do believe in the gut check, but I believe that it's data-driven. And I believe that there's something innate that's telling you, okay, something that I know about this geology, this location, this team is telling me that this project is interesting or not interesting. But I think there's a real piece for leaders in how do they actually identify what are the problems that we're solving for, what are the right answers or right data to solve those problems, and how are we approaching it. I don't think we're going to win, the next, talent war or solve some of the massive energy transition challenges that are ahead of us with just the technical skills. I think we need to go back and make sure that our leaders are looking at problems in the right way and thinking around how to solve them in the right way.
Thank you. Ross, how do you reconcile the need for the resource extraction with the imperative to protect the environment? And can you share maybe a few specific strategies of the initiatives your companies have done?
Sure. Well, I think some of the examples, Rob's given a great example of what he's looking to do with the new mine in the Argentine Andes. But the fact is that today mining is done differently than it was done 50 years ago. We have to do it differently. We have these twin crises of climate change, biodiversity loss, that are real problems for the world, and a lot of people understand that they're real problems, and actually there are many, many solutions to those problems. And mining can be part of the solution. And there are mines that are done right, and there are mines that are done wrong. And I think most public companies today understand the need for doing things right. There's a huge amount of effort in the mining industry to go to carbon neutral, and there is increasingly an interest in so-called natural capital, and trying to do things to protect biodiversity as much as possible. At the same time, we have to recognize mine is a non-renewable resource, or non-renewable industry, and is inherently destructive of a small piece of land temporarily. And that land can be reclaimed after mines close, and all mines eventually close. So what do you have to do today? You have to look after your water better than ever. You have to make sure you have no airborne particulates that are polluting. You have to minimize your footprint. You have to mine a little bit differently. For example, one of the big problems in the whole mining industry for years has been tailings dams. Every so often, not every year, but almost every year, somewhere in the world, a tailings dam breaks and you have an environmental catastrophe. This is avoidable. This is almost always they're engineering design problems, and they should never happen. And so some techniques are different design, but also what we're doing in as much as we can is moving to so-called dry stack tailings, which means you don't have to have a tailings dam, you don't have to have water. You dry the tailings and you stack them, and you can reclaim them more quickly. So it's a little more expensive from an operating cost standpoint, but it's cheaper in the long run. And it causes no heartache or no if you have a seismic event, you don't have to worry. So it's that kind of thing you can do. And decrease your footprint. Acquire land that you can protect forever to offset land that you're consuming in the mining industry. There's many, many things you can do. And the more you focus on this, what happens? The better reputation you get, the less you have, actually at the end of the day, you have lower costs, so it's just great for the bottom line. You have a better reputation in your community, with your employees. You can hire people that have an interest in working for a good company that thinks about these things. And a lot of young people today, they actually want more than just money. Everybody wants well-paid jobs. The mining industry does deliver that. They also want to work with a sort of sense of purpose. They're working for good companies. They're working for companies that actually address these things, think about them, meet about them, and try to actually use the best practices globally, regardless of whatever principles of ESG somebody might want you to do. You do this stuff just as it's good business. You look after your employees, you look after your environment, you look after your communities. If you do all of that, you have a good business, you have a good reputation, and you can prosper. And you can actually attract people who want to work in a forward-looking company. That's what we try to do. I'm not too vexed, actually, about worker shortages in, say, Canada. People going into other industries in Canada because for whatever reason, because we are an international company. Well, Pan American has 24,000 employees now in must be 7 countries. Equinox Gold has about 8,000 employees in 4 countries. These are all Latin American countries and the US and Canada. Every one of our 5,000 employees in Brazil is Brazilian, every single one. And they're good engineers, they're young people, they're extremely interested in working for good companies that have good ethics and good social values, good environmental values. They're just great people, and we see a lot of opportunity for those people coming up. So yes, we may not have as many Canadians going into the Canadian engineering schools as we used to, but there's a big feeder pipeline in Latin America, and we're certainly exploiting that.
Thank you. And touching on projects in development, Skouries is in development currently. If you look at Paul, how does Eldorado Gold embed the evolving demands of the energy transition into its systems and governance? And how have you created accountability from site level up to C-suite?
Yeah, Skouries is a great example of how we do things. And as Ross mentioned, this is a development in northern Greece where we completely redesigned the tailings aspects of it and moved to a dry stack tailings solution. Yes, it costs a bit more in terms of the design, but it's the right thing to do for the local environment. But it's not just what we're trying to do, it's how we do it. And for us at Eldorado, we're very proud of a management system that we've put in place, which is called SIMS, which stands for Sustainability Integrated Management System. Now, this system is how we connect our intentions to what we do every day, what all of our frontline workers do, what our leaders do, what they focus on. And this system basically allows us to track the obligations that we've got, obligations that we put on ourselves, obligations that are put on us by regulations in the countries that we operate in. But it also connects to how do we actually measure, how do we ensure that we are doing and meeting all of those obligations? How do we report them through our management systems so that we can actually manage the business consistently across the globe where we're operating? And how do we then audit that and demonstrate to the people that are looking at us to say, are you developing this mine in a sustainable, environmentally focused manner? And then we can publish the results of those audits. And it ties back to everything we do, all the way into how we remunerate our staff and our leaders. And for us, I think it's something that makes us an industry leader for a company of our size. And I'm very proud that we've integrated that system into how Eldorado works every day.
Thank you. Talking about, skill sets, leadership, Marley, BHP has their Explore program. It's innovative. It's one of a kind. What are the practical steps, what are the types of talent that you seek for and the qualities that you seek for in the participants joining? What were the core kind of standouts that really...
Yeah, so I guess for anybody in the room that's not familiar, BHP Explore is BHP's accelerator program for exploration activities. And so once a year we put a call out globally for anybody that's got an interesting sort of exploration idea or thesis, hypothesis, and then we go through and narrow that down to a cohort of companies that we bring in and spend 6 months with us. One of the things that I think, unless you've been through the Explore process, you don't necessarily realize is whilst we have to love the opportunity in the geology first, what a lot of the time Explore comes down to is the teams and who we're bringing in. And we are really rigorous in how we look and assess teams because, Explore is about building long-term relationships with the people that we think are going to find the next big discovery and transform the industry. And so we want to make sure they're the right partners for us. So in terms of what we look for, really strong management teams that are really open, humble, willing to learn, grow, and partner with us. We want to see values alignment first and foremost, but we're not expecting that they've got all the answers. And we just finished Explore Interview Week for next year's cohort, and the interview panel, the companies that we responded the most positively to were actually the ones that walked into the room and told us what they didn't know. And we're really clear around, this is what we don't know, this is where we need help. And similarly, there's a lot that we don't know as BHP. And so a big part of Explore is finding companies that we think we can learn off that have, you know, as I said, a really strong values alignment, a strong management team, and have that real willingness to partner to find the next big discovery.
Thank you. I think that segues quite interestingly into the Gold Corp Challenge, Rob. You know, your use of crowdsourcing as a value creation lever was highly successful. How do you, maybe perhaps for the audience, you could just briefly touch on the Gold Corp Challenge, but also how do you see similar innovative approaches being used in the industry?
Thank you, Rowan. The Gold Corp Challenge, we launched it in 2019, and we took all of our geological data. We found a very rich occurrence of gold a mile below surface, and I wanted to know how big the deposit was, and our head of exploration said, I don't know, and I said, that's the wrong answer. I said, how long is it going to take? And he said, I don't know, and I thought that was another wrong answer. So looking at it, I said, there's greenstone belts, which is the host of our gold deposit on every continent. Maybe there's expertise out there. And we took all of our geological data, threw it up on the web, and asked the world to tell us where we'd find the next 6 million ounces of gold, and offered $500,000 in prize money. It was one of the very early examples of incentivized crowdsourcing. We had 1,500 people from 50 countries take down a 400 megabyte file, and there were all sorts of ideas. There were people coming in with organic solutions to what are thought to be inorganic problems. There was advanced mathematics. There was computer graphics of the like I'd never seen in the industry before. And it was just this cornucopia of ideas. We ended up finding $3 billion worth of gold. So it worked out reasonably well. And coming away from it, you just went, let me think. One takeaway was it's how you define the problem statement. And a lot of people get stuck in a track based on the assumptions of their profession, and they can't see outside that. So that opened up. And the other was that the biggest gold mine in the world is not in the ground. It's between everybody's ears. And so how do you connect them? How do you gather those ideas? So thinking of Los Azules, water is a big problem. Energy is a big problem. And saying, well, we've got electricity. We've got a good source for that. But can we optimize what we're doing? Can we have a contest and scour the world for ideas about how we might be able to use waste heat from machinery and equipment to heat buildings or other parts of our process? How we're in the business of moving material. We terraform. So can you optimize the topography to maximize the efficiencies of solar or wind or water? Can you go and think about cooling in the summer and start compacting the snow in the winter with a snowcat or something, turn it into ice, and then use it as a coolant in the summer? I don't think there's any shortage of ideas out there, and the web provides that vehicle to gather those ideas. So.
Okay, no, really interesting. I think the next question goes back to more on the leadership component, and it can be responded by all of you, but we'll start with Ross. How has your actual leadership philosophy evolved over the years, especially in the light of increasing importance of sustainability and social responsibility for mining? What's changed? How's it evolved?
Sure. I mean, it's 40 years in the business, running public companies of different kinds. Things have evolved, for sure. I mean, the whole ESG thing, diversity, inclusion, that stuff as well, it's very much more important today than it was 40 years ago, for sure. And fortunately, there are if you embody that in your company today, you actually have a better company. And I mean, there's no question about that. If you have more women in your board, if you have more women in your management team, you think a little bit differently, and you actually have more solutions to problems. So I'm a big believer in that. I don't think you should push it. You shouldn't do it specifically, but you should certainly have hiring techniques that do not have any bias in them at all. It's the best person for the job, period. So that's a change. The whole need to have more community sign-on to projects that you're doing, a lot more community involvement is critically important. Now, it wasn't as important 40 years ago, say, but it's really important for business. You have to have social license. You really do. In Canada, we have a lot of First Nations. You absolutely now have to have First Nations consent. Not just be consulted, but consent to what you're doing if they're in your neighborhood. And if you speak to them properly and if respectfully and share in the benefits of a project, you're going to get that consent. You know, our latest mine in Ontario, the Greenstone mine, it's a big 400,000 ounce a year gold mine that just opened up this year. We have 5 First Nations that took years to get to an impact benefit agreement that worked with them. They are delighted with how things are going. 20% of our workforce is Indigenous, and it's just been a win-win. So, you know, these things are more important today than they've ever been. Certainly they're more important than they were 40 years ago. But like I said before, if you embody them in your business, environment, social, good governance, diversity, inclusion, all that stuff, you don't have to make a big deal about it. You just have to believe in it enough to embody it in your business. And at the end of the day, it makes money. It's just good business. So critically important and much more in focus. Shareholders want it. Banks want it. If you do it well, you're going to get a good reputation, and there's nothing wrong with good reputations in this world. So you're going to be a good place to work for.
Thanks, Ross. What do you think, Paul?
Do you know what? I agree with almost everything Ross said there, but I'm smiling because I think back to my first job in a public company. And I can remember going to a town hall, and we had a CEO, and I would describe him as a rock star leader. And this was back when the leader of the company knew everything. They had the answer for everything. They didn't need to speak to anybody else. They knew where we were going. They had the strategy. They dreamt it up on Friday evening, and they were going to tell us everything we needed to do. And you know what? Companies like that make mistakes. And that age of the rock star leader, I think, has evolved now to C-suite leaders who are all about inclusion. They're all about empathy, and they're all about vulnerability. They know that they don't know everything, and they want to include all of that experience and knowledge that now exists in the companies that we work for to get to a better answer, a better strategy, a more consistent outcome. And I had a very formative 12 months working for one of these rockstar leaders as their chief of staff. And I tell you what, I don't think he ever asked me anything, and I didn't sleep for 12 months. He did teach me a few other things that I've put to good use in my career, but the time of that rockstar leader, I think, has gone, and the time of the inclusive, empathetic, vulnerable collaborator who gets things done by bringing everyone together, that's the time that we're in, and that's the type of leaders that I think the youngsters coming into our industry want to be working for.
Nobody would ever accuse me of being vulnerable or empathetic, but
You've got time.
I do try. I try.
Riley, what are your thoughts? You've transitioned to the mining industry over the past few years. What?
Yeah, I think I tick a couple of the token diversity boxes, right? I'm female. I've been in this industry for 12 months. I know a lot about making Diet Coke and still learning about mining. And, you know, I think there are a number of people that have got more experience in the industry than the years that I've been alive. So I tick the young box as well, often in the room. And for me, you know, I agree with everything that's said here. I've had to get really clear on what's my value proposition as a leader. You know, who do I want to be? Where do I add value? And I'm great at finding crazy people with wonderful ideas and helping them make them happen. And I've been really fortunate in my career that I've had a lot of people that have given me opportunities, not despite of my age, my gender, my experience, but because of it. Have gone, okay, there's something here, this experience set is useful, the way you think about the world or solve problems is useful. And so for me, my big leadership philosophy is finding and giving that opportunity to others. You know, we have a really strong female representation at BHP. Gender parity is really important to us, but it's so much more than a number. There are just some like really phenomenal female leaders that have given me a lot of opportunities, and you see that come in waves. You know, I was hired by a wonderful female leader at BHP. I then hired a bunch of absolutely weapon female managers into the teams that will become the head ofs and the VPs of BHP or other companies if they decide to take that. So I think the profile of leadership is changing, but then there's also a big ask on those of us that do things a little bit differently to make sure that we're kicking the same doors open to other people.
Excellent. Anything to add on that, Rob, on your side?
Sure. I give people a lot of latitude. I'd like to see them be curious, think of alternatives. And if someone comes in and said they've always done it that way, it's like I'm a bull in a field and I saw a red flag. I think it's very important to have a lot of flexibility, have imagination, and look across industries to look for approaches and technology that we might use in our industry.
Excellent. Perfect. It'd be interesting to know from all of you, just a rapid fire type question before we take maybe one or two questions from the audience. What are the absolute skill sets that you desire when making a hire? What are the key things that you really look out for? Riley?
Yeah, I look for hustle and learning agility. I think you can outlearn the competition. And so I don't want people that have got the answers, but I want people that can go find them and will go find them by themselves.
Paul?
I think for me, I want people that have curiosity, and I want people that want to be part of doing something extraordinary. Collaborating and delivering the extraordinary that you never thought you could. That's what I'm looking for.
I'm looking for smart people. People who are smart. People, because if you're smart, you can adapt, you can conform, you can do good things, and you can think out of the box. And if you're smart, not just smart people, and they stand out. Actually, they do stand out. So that's my filter.
Can do, attitude, passion, exhibited in areas, and they want to get the job done.
Excellent. Thank you. Over to you, Andrew.
Sorry, the mic is on now, sorry. We can take one question from the floor. Or if we have no questions, perhaps we can give a warm round of applause to our panel, and that was a really excellent keynote.